Hello, I'm Annie, and it's time to join me on some obscure book adventures. In this video, I will talk about a rather old and obscure occult detective, female occult detective, because it is Occult Detective October. And Occult Detective October is the whole of the month October, where we read all kinds of occult detectives. An occult detective is a detective story in which the detective or police investigator is investigating all magical and ghostly things and goings on. Occult Detective October was started by MJ over at Reading This Live. And I will link her channel in the description box below, all together with all of the other hosts and co-hosts of this event. So a while back, I decided I would try and listen to some audiobooks. So I downloaded the LibriVox app, which is free to use, on my telephone. And I looked for pulp audiobooks. So I came across this channel, Pulp Fiction, and there was a collection of short stories, and that was called the Florence Cusack Mysteries. So I listened to that. It was written by L.T. Meade, and I listened to that, and I liked the first story very, very much. Not an occult story, so I leave my review of that book for another time. But I was interested in more of L.T. Meade's writing and novels. So I looked her up on Wikipedia, and lo and behold, she wrote also an occult detective. She wrote it with Robert Eustace. Together they wrote the Miss Marburg stories. Miss Marburg is a palm reader, but she doesn't only read the lines of the palm, she can also see in somebody's future. So she tries to solve, or she does solve, mysteries and murders and all kinds of things because she knows the future of these people. So I was curious if I could find some of the original stories, but I couldn't find any of that at that time. But I did find the Oracular Miss Marburg, written by Scott Dickerson, and he wrote it in 2018, so I bought that instead. But I must say I was a bit disappointed. The stories are not that suspenseful. They are boring at some points. They are mediocre. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. The lack of suspense and lack of action isn't always a problem, I think, but when it's not a problem, the characters are well developed and interesting to read about, and the atmosphere and the setting of the story is well written, could be well written. So then suspense and action isn't that important, but that's not the case in this story, in this book, regrettably. The best story in Dickerson's book is The Monster's Hand. The plot is really very good. It's excellent. And the pool scene has also some moments of suspense in it. So I enjoyed that story reasonably well, although, well, it was okay. When I bought the Oracular Miss Marburg, I was under the impression that Scott Dickerson wrote new stories with Miss Marburg in it. The original Miss Marburg stories are from 1902 and were published in serialized in a magazine. But when I researched further, there I could find one Miss Marburg story in a book that was still available. I will link it in the description below. L.T. Meade, a short story collection. So I got that one and I read the Miss Marburg story, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was suspense. There was atmospherically very well written. The dialogues were excellent. But I noticed this story, which is called The Dead Hand. Scott Dickerson, he didn't write The Monster's Hand. He just rewrote and made it more awful, in my opinion. He just rewrote the story The Dead Hand. He was wise enough not to change the plot, but he took out all of the suspense and all of the atmosphere. The best bits he let in, some bits he literally copied from the original, which I think were the best bits he did. But I thought, well, that wasn't what I believed I was getting when I bought the Oracular Miss Marburg. That was not what I thought it would be. There was no indication on the cover that he didn't made up his own stories and his own plots. There was nothing in the text that accompanied the page where you buy this book. There's nothing of the sort in it, so I couldn't have known it in advance. I would have liked it to know it in advance. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have bought this book. I must admit, when reading the introduction, he doesn't call himself the writer. He calls himself the editor of the story, so he is honest in that. He says Miss Marburg stories were made up and such things by L.T. Meade and Robert Eustace, so he does credit them in the introduction. And in the introduction there is something that he mentions that is a little bit vague in my opinion. Let me read it to you. So he talks about the personality of Miss Marburg. He talks when they were published in 1902, and then he writes the following. These originals are out there to be read. Here you will find a new original. So now I put to you the question, what does this say? What does this mean? Because maybe my English isn't good enough, but I thought this was a little bit vague. New originals, does he says with new originals, does this mean he says that he has only rewritten the original stories? Or, well, what is it? So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is he honest about this? I think he's a little bit vague. So I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't know this in advance. I don't have a problem with reusing in the public domain writings. That's okay, but the originals, I must imagine when reading The Dead Hand, the originals were so brilliant. This original was so absolutely brilliant. You can only make it worse. I would rather have him publish the original stories. I would have gladly paid him money for that, but he made it worse. I can't say. I don't know the exact intentions when Dickerson rewrote these stories, but it does seem to me a bit of a case of rewriting in the public domain stories because it's an easy way to copyright old in the public domain stories for himself, so he can get money from that. But I don't know, of course, if that was his intention, but I can't say any good about it. But I won't go on about it. If you want to read an original L.T. Meade Miss Marburg story, you can read The Dead Hand for yourself in L.T. Meade, the short story collection. It's still available in ebook format, so I will leave a link to that in the description box below. So let me know what you think of all this. Let me know in the comments below, and hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.